Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, MR.Creepy. So today's video is going to seriously creep you out. And if you've had a creepy experience of your own out on the road, drop it in the comments. I'm always looking for real stories, and I will personally reach out to you. I'm still pretty new to this, so your support genuinely means a lot to me. If you enjoy this kind of content, please like the video and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now, before we get into it, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Alright, let's get into tonight's stories. It was the kind of night where the sky never fully went dark. Not because of light, but because of lightning. Constant, low, flickering flashes behind walls of black cloud. I remember thinking, as I turned onto the highway, that it looked like something was breathing up there. I was 21 at the time, living with my parents for the summer, home from college. I hadn't planned on going out that night at all. My friend called me close to midnight, drunk and stranded at a bar in town, about 10 minutes from our house. She asked if I could pick her up. It was a Friday. I had nothing going on. So I drove out, picked her up, dropped her off at her place, and turned back toward home. By the time I got back on the highway, the storm had rolled in properly. Not a dramatic crash of thunder, just a steady, suffocating downpour that turned everything beyond my headlights into a grey wall. The wipers were working as fast as they could go, and it still wasn't enough. I had the road almost entirely to myself. Just me, the dark farmland on either side, and the rain hammering the roof of my car. Then I felt it. That sputter, that unmistakable hiccup in the engine that means something is wrong. I glanced at the gauge and my stomach dropped. Empty. Completely empty. I want to say I was surprised. I wasn't. My gas light had been on since that morning when I drove to work. I told myself I'd fill up the next day before I left. I didn't think about it when I went to pick her up. And now, in the middle of a thunderstorm, on the rural highway at 12:30 in the morning, my car coasted to the shoulder and died. I sat there for a moment listening to the rain. It was loud, louder than I expected. The kind of sound that isolates you. You can hear it, but nothing past it. I remembered there was a gas station about a mile or so up the road. Maybe less, maybe more. I wasn't sure, but I figured if I walked, I could get there, grab a small can of fuel, and come back. It wasn't a great plan, but it was the only one I had. I didn't want to call my parents at this hour. Most of my friends were drinking tonight. The ones who weren't were probably asleep. I pulled on my jacket, locked the car, and stepped out into the storm. The cold hit me immediately. Not just cold, biting. The rain was coming sideways and the temperature had dropped sharply in the last few hours. Every step on the wet asphalt felt loud even through the rain. The shoulder was narrow, and beyond it, the land just disappeared into darkness. I had been walking maybe a minute, maybe 100 feet past my car, when I heard it behind me. An engine, low and slow. My first instinct was relief. A cop, maybe, or just another driver who might stop and help. But then the sound didn't change pitch the way a passing car would. It stayed low. It stayed slow. I turned, squinting through the rain, and saw the headlights approaching. Older, slightly yellowed, moving at maybe half the speed of normal traffic. It was a van. White, or what used to be white. The paint was streaked with rust and road grime, and it was impossible to tell in the dark how old it was, but old enough that it had no rear camera housing, no modern lines, just a flat blank face, no company logo, no markings, just a dirty, beaten white van crawling up the highway in the rain. It slowed as it reached me, then it matched my pace. I kept walking. I told myself to keep walking. The van stayed even with me. I could see the driver through the passenger window. A man, dark hair plastered wet against his face like he'd had his window down. A heavy beard, a cap pulled low. He wasn't looking at me. Or rather, he wasn't looking at me in the way a person who wants to help looks at you. He glanced over once, just briefly, the way you check something you already knew was there. I stopped. He stopped. He didn't roll the window down, didn't say anything. The van just idled there in the rain beside me, wipers going, exhaust curling up into the wet air. I held up a hand toward him, shook my head. I'm fine. I don't need anything. He didn't respond, didn't move. The van just sat there. I started walking faster. He started moving again, matching my speed exactly. Every step I took, he matched. The rain was so loud, I couldn't hear anything past it. Not footsteps, not a door, nothing. That was the part that scared me most. I couldn't hear what he was doing inside that vehicle. Then the van moved ahead, just slightly. It pulled a few car lengths in front of me, and I felt a brief rush of relief. Maybe he was leaving. Then the brake lights flared red in the rain, and the van turned, angling itself diagonally across the shoulder and the edge of the lane, blocking the road in front of me completely. I didn't think. I ran. I turned and sprinted back the way I came, back toward my car. The rain blinded me, and the road was slick, and I slipped once but kept moving. I didn't look back until I was nearly at my car. When I did, I saw the van's reverse lights glowing red in the rain. It was backing up, slowly, steadily, coming back toward me. I got to my car, threw myself in, locked every door. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold my phone. I climbed into the back seat and pulled a blanket over myself. I don't know why, some instinct. And I lay there in the dark, listening to the rain, waiting. A few minutes passed. Then I heard another car go by. Just one. It didn't stop. I waited longer. Then I sat up and looked out. The van was gone. The road was empty. Just rain and dark and the distant flicker of lightning over the fields. I called the police from inside my locked car. They arrived within 15 minutes, gave me a lift to the gas station and back. One officer said he'd watch for the van on his route. I never heard anything more about it. I don't know who that man was or what he would have done if I hadn't run. I think about that sometimes when I'm driving at night, especially in the rain. I always check my gas before I leave now. Every single time. I travel a lot for work. Long drives mostly. Anything within about 5 hours and I'll drive rather than fly. I've done it so many times that I stopped thinking of late night highway driving as anything unusual. You get used to the rhythm of it. The mile markers, the exit signs, the cruise control hum. This particular night, I was coming back from a trip I'd taken 2 states over. I'd been on the road since early afternoon, and by midnight, I was running out of energy fast. The rain had been following me for the last hour. Not a torrential storm, but that low, persistent kind that fogs the windshield and makes everything look slightly unreal. The road was nearly empty. The few cars I passed were moving fast, going somewhere, not lingering. I saw the sign for a rest area and took the exit. I needed to use the restroom, get something from a vending machine and stretch my legs. 5 minutes, maybe 10. The rest stop was small. A single building, restrooms, a narrow lobby with brochures and vending machines, a long diagonal row of parking spaces in front. When I pulled in, there were 2 other vehicles. One was parked right near the building doors. A couple walked out as I walked in, said a friendly hello, got in their car, and left. The other was parked further down the row, partially under a broken light fixture that buzzed and flickered in the rain. It was an older sedan, 4-door, early 2000s model. What caught my attention was that every window was covered from the inside, dark fabric. What looked like moving blankets draped across the glass. All the lights were off. I assumed someone was sleeping in there, trying to block out the light. I went inside, used the restroom, grabbed a drink. When I came back out, it was just me in that sedan. I got in my car, started the engine, pulled out of the parking space. The sedan's engine turned on. I watched it in my mirror. No lights came on. The blankets were still over the windows, but the car was running. And as I looped toward the exit back to the highway, it began to move. It pulled out without headlights and followed me. I told myself it was probably just someone who'd been sleeping in their car, now leaving at the same time. It happened, but no lights. That stuck with me. On a rainy night, no headlights. I got back on the highway, and so did the sedan. It settled in behind me at a comfortable distance, keeping pace. I could barely see it, just a dark shape in the rain. No reflections, no running lights, nothing. I slowed down gradually. The sedan slowed. I sped up. It sped up. For 10 minutes, it stayed exactly one consistent distance behind me. The rain was steady and heavy, and my visibility was already poor. Having something behind me that I couldn't properly see was making my skin crawl. I took the next exit. So did the sedan. The town I ended up in was small. No gas stations visible, no open businesses, no traffic. Just wet residential streets with the occasional porch light blurred by rain. I turned down one street. The sedan followed. I turned again onto a narrower road. It followed again. The rain was loud against my roof, and I had my hazards on now without thinking, which in hindsight probably made me easier to follow. I wasn't thinking clearly. I turned into the first driveway I saw, a dark house, no lights on inside, and stopped. My breathing was all wrong. My hands were tight on the wheel. The sedan stopped at the end of the driveway. It didn't pull in. It just sat there, engine running in the rain, blocking my way back out. Nobody got out. 30 seconds passed, maybe more. I sat there staring at it through the rain-blurred rear window, trying to make out any detail, any face, anything. The storm chose that moment to intensify. A crack of thunder close enough to feel in my chest, and a burst of rain so heavy I lost visual on the sedan entirely for a few seconds. Then a light came on inside the house. The front door opened and a man stepped onto the porch, looking out at his driveway with the expression of someone who is confused and not particularly pleased about it. The sedan drove off. No hesitation, no lights. It just pulled away from the driveway in the rain and disappeared down the street. I sat in that man's driveway shaking while rain poured down around me. I rolled my window down and told him someone had been following me, and I was sorry to pull in. I'd leave right now. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded and went back inside. I drove the opposite direction from where the sedan had gone. I got my phone mapped to home, and I didn't stop for anything. Not food, not gas, nothing, until I was 2 exits from my house. I still don't know who was in that car. I don't know what the blankets were for, or why they never turned their lights on, or what they were planning. What I know is that they were watching me at that rest stop. They were waiting, and they left the moment there was a witness. I don't stop at rest stops alone at night anymore. Not in the rain, not ever. Every December, I made the same drive. My aunt lived upstate in a house that had been in the family for decades, tucked back from the main road at the end of a long gravel path. The whole extended family gathered there every year, without fail. It was tradition. It was non-negotiable. The route to her place was nothing special, mostly interstate, then a stretch of rural highway that cut through flat farmland before climbing into tree-covered hills near the state line. I'd driven it a dozen times. I knew which exits to take, which stretches were boring, where the road narrowed. That particular year, I left late. I'd come off a double shift and told myself I'd sleep first and drive in the morning, but my family expected me by morning, and I knew if I pushed it back, I'd hear about it for the next 6 months. So I got in the car, exhausted, with a coffee I didn't finish, and started the drive. By the time I hit the rural stretch, the storm had started. Not gradually. It came in all at once, the way winter storms do in that part of the state. Rain first, then sleet, then heavy rain again. The temperature on my dashboard read 34 degrees. The road was cold and wet, and the tree line on either side was completely swallowed by darkness. My headlights lit maybe 50 feet ahead of me, and no more. That's when I noticed the gas gauge. My brother had promised he'd fill the tank the day before. He hadn't, or he forgot. Either way, I was halfway through the rural stretch with the needle buried below the quarter mark, dropping fast on a cold engine. I started doing the math in my head. I wasn't going to make it to the next highway exit. Then I saw the sign. It was nailed to a wooden post at the side of the road, barely visible in the sleet. A piece of corrugated metal with painted letters that had mostly faded. GAC, next, EXIT. The exit marker was maybe a quarter mile ahead. I had no real choice. The road that followed was 2 lanes, cracked, no shoulder markings, lined on both sides with heavy trees that closed in as I went deeper. The rain on the leaves made a sound like static. Every turn felt like I was descending rather than just driving, like the road was taking me somewhere below the rest of the world. The trees opened up, and I saw the station. I knew immediately it had been closed for years. The roof over the pump canopy had partially collapsed. one corner dipping down to nearly ground level. The windows of the attached building were boarded with plywood gone dark from moisture. The pumps themselves were gone, just rusted steel bases sitting in cracked concrete, filled with weeds. Even in December, a gutter had broken loose from the eave and was swinging in the wind, knocking against the building with a dull, rhythmic clank. I pulled over anyway, put the car in park, and called roadside assistance. They told me a truck would come, but it would be a long wait given the weather. I kept the engine running for heat and left the headlights on. There was nothing else to do. For the first 15 minutes, nothing happened. The rain came and went in waves. The broken gutter kept knocking. I was half asleep, phone in hand, when I caught something in my peripheral vision near the side of the building. Movement, just at the edge of my headlight beam. I told myself it was the gutter swinging, or a branch. Pumming some and then a voice came through the rain, sharp and close. "Hey, come here." I looked up immediately. A man was standing at the corner of the building. He was in the beam of my headlights, which meant I could see him clearly, or clearly enough. Dark, heavy clothing, a beard, the kind of look that comes from spending a lot of time outside in weather. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there, looking directly at my car. I cracked the window about 2 inches. "What do you need? You got any change?" His voice was flat, no inflection, not a question so much as a statement. "I don't have any cash. Sorry." He didn't move. He didn't look away. He just stood there in the rain, hands at his sides, watching my car. His expression didn't change at all. That was the part I couldn't shake. No frustration, no acknowledgement, nothing, like I hadn't spoken. Then I noticed movement beyond him, back in the trees, past the edge of the headlight reach, something shifting. I leaned forward slightly, squinting through the sleet on my windshield, and then I understood what I was seeing. People, not one or two, a lot of them, standing between the trees, just far enough back that they were mostly shadow, but close enough that when the lightning flashed, and it did, a long slow burst that lit the entire area for 2 full seconds, I could see their faces. Some of them had their heads tilted slightly. All of them were looking at my car. None of them were moving. None of them were speaking. The lightning died, and the darkness came back, and they were just shapes again. But I had seen them. I had counted at least 15 in that 2-second window, and I was sure there were more behind the ones I could see. Another figure stepped out from the side of the building and moved toward the first man. I put the car in drive and floored it. The engine protested. Cold, barely enough fuel, but it moved. I got back onto the 2-lane road and didn't stop. I pushed the car all the way back to the highway on fumes, coasting the last few hundred feet, and called roadside assistance again to give them my new location. When the truck arrived, the driver filled me up, asked no questions, and left. I sat in my car for a while after that. When I finally got to my aunt's house, I called the local sheriff's department and gave them the location and description. They called me back later that night. An officer had gone out to check. Nobody was there, but they found evidence of people living in the woods. Blankets, fire pits, cleared areas between the trees, empty containers. A lot of them, the officer said. More than you'd expect. He didn't elaborate on that. I didn't ask. I still do that drive every December, but I never leave without a full tank anymore, and I never, under any circumstances, take an unmarked exit in the dark. A few years back, my friend Tez and I spent 6 weeks driving across the country. We were both in our mid-20s, broke, and completely committed to the idea. New York to LA, no fixed schedule, sleeping in the back of my hatchback. My mum had driven long-haul trucks for most of my childhood, so living on the road didn't feel foreign to me. We made curtains from old sheets, figured out how to arrange the back so 2 people could actually sleep, and by the end of the first week, it felt like home. Most of it was genuinely one of the best things I've ever done. We met people everywhere, campers and locals and old men at diners who had stories that put ours to shame. Every stranger we came across was good, generous, curious, warm. Until Arizona. We were near Flagstaff when the weather turned. A late storm system had pushed in from the northwest, and the temperature dropped about 15 degrees in a few hours. We'd found a free campsite on a map app, remote, in the national forest, a few miles from the main road. It was the kind of place we'd stayed a dozen times before. We pulled in around 9 at night, the rain just starting to spit, and found only a couple of other vehicles and an old RV parked at the far end of the site. As we drove past the RV, the door swung open. A man stepped down out of it and stood in the rain. Tez, being Tez, waved at him. She waved at everybody. He didn't wave back. He just stood there and looked at her with an expression I don't have a word for. Not angry, not curious, just empty, watchful. Then, without saying anything, he stepped back inside and pulled the door shut, still watching us through the crack until the latch caught. We parked further in and told ourselves he was just a private guy who wanted his space. We'd seen plenty of those. We got out and started setting up, goofing around in the rain with flashlights, taking stupid pictures of each other, laughing about something I don't even remember now. Tez spotted a campfire down the hill. Naturally, she wanted to go down. That had been our whole trip, meeting people, sharing whatever we had, trading stories. No reason this night should be different. We walked down and found two men by the fire. The older one was clearly somewhere else, mentally, spinning slow circles, talking about satellite patterns and government signals, harmless but checked out. The younger one introduced himself as a former park ranger. He was easy to talk to, personable. He knew the area well, and the conversation flowed naturally for a while. Our trip, his time working in the parks, the difference between the forests out west and the ones back east. Then he mentioned the bear, said he'd spotted one earlier that afternoon, close to the campsite. Tez didn't believe him, so he pulled out his phone and showed her. The picture was real, a large black bear, maybe 30 feet from where we were sitting, caught in a trail camera shot. We both shifted uncomfortably, because one of us always ended up needing to get out of the car at 2 in the morning, and the idea of stumbling into something like that in the dark wasn't funny. And the ranger laughed, just slightly, and something about his face changed. He looked at both of us and said, "If you get out of your car in the middle of the night, it's not a bear you should be worried about." I waited for him to smile, to nudge Tez, or make a face that meant he was messing with us. He didn't. He just looked at us, steady and calm, in the firelight and the rain. I made a joke about serial killers to break the tension. Tez played along, threw in a movie reference. He let the joke land and then brought it right back. People going missing in the woods, things that moved through the trees at night. The way sounds travel differently in a storm. It stopped feeling like campfire stories. The way he said things, measured, specific. It felt like he was telling us something rather than entertaining us. But why would a stranger at a campfire in the middle of a national forest choose to warn two people he'd just met? The older man was useless, still staring up at the cloud cover, muttering to himself. Then the ranger stood up and walked toward his cooler, which was set just outside the ring of firelight. That's when I saw it. A small red dot in the dark, barely visible in the rain. It took me a moment to understand what I was seeing. A camera. He was holding a camera, and it was pointed at us. Not casually, deliberately. He adjusted the angle, checked the screen, and took another shot. This time the flash went off, a hard white burst of light that froze Tez's face mid-expression and made the surrounding trees jump out of the dark for a half second. We sat completely still, both of us. He came back and sat down as if nothing had happened. No explanation, no apology. He just picked up the conversation where he'd left it. We made up an excuse. Needed to set up the car. Long day, early start. He nodded. The older man smiled vaguely and told us to have a good night. The ranger looked at us for a long moment and said, "Be careful out there. There's more than bears in the woods." Every muscle in my body tensed. Tez grabbed my arm and steered us up the hill toward the car. The second we were inside, she locked the doors. Her breathing was all over the place. Why was he taking pictures of us? I didn't have an answer. The first thing I said, which I regret because it did not help either of us, was, "I read once that serial killers sometimes warn their victims first." She stared at me. Then she locked the doors again, like she'd forgotten she'd already done it. We had nothing to pack. By some luck, we hadn't finished setting up. I started the car and turned on the headlights. Tez immediately reached over and switched them off. I don't know why that was the right instinct, but it was. We sat in the dark for 10 seconds, then I put the car in drive, and we rolled slowly down the dirt track, without lights, until we hit the main road. I glanced in the rearview mirror as we left the site. The ranger was walking toward where our car had been, not running, walking, looking in our direction, and he wasn't smiling anymore. I drove with the storm the whole way out of the forest. The rain didn't let up until we were 40 miles down the highway. Neither of us spoke for most of it. Tez kept checking the side mirror. We never reported it. I've thought about that since. What would we have even said? A man at a campfire told us to be careful and took our picture. Nothing illegal, nothing provable. But I know what I felt sitting by that fire, and I know what his face looked like when he said those things. And I know that whatever was in those woods that night, we were lucky to not find out. We finished the trip. We made it to LA, but Tez didn't sleep at campsites after that. Neither did I. I still don't.